Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today here for the selection criteria for cloud deployment. I'm Victoria Chavez, a Senior Advisory Services Consultant here at TEC. With me here today presenting is Helbert Bello, Senior Project Manager here at TEC, who I think many of you may know very well. TEC, or Technology Evaluation Centers, is an impartial software advisory firm that helps businesses globally with the planning, the research, the evaluation, selection, and the adoption of enterprise software. Essentially, we help businesses to save time, to save money, and most importantly, to manage the risks that are associated with that. I'd like to give a special thanks to technowebinars.com for their partnership and also for their continued support in helping make webinars like today happen. And also thank you, Helbert, for being here today. We look very much forward to learning some of the many ways that you can optimize your cloud strategy for success based on your many years of experience and your expertise. Just before we get into it, I just want to make a comment that at the end of the webinar, Helbert's going to open the floor so that you can ask your questions. Of course, you can use a chat, but we prefer that you just raise your hand, enjoy, don't be shy, jump into the discussion. We welcome it 100%. So Helbert, thank you very much for being here today. I will let you get started.
Yes, thank you, Victoria, for the introductions. And I'm glad I'm here, and it's an honor to be invited again from, the webinars, and I like very much to do this, so I appreciate your invite once again. So Victoria pretty much said, about me and about the company, but I'll just briefly again, just address that because I believe we can help, we can help your company. That's what technology evaluation centers do. It's to help companies to assess the best fitment solution to their needs. And when I say solution, we can go from a range of systems and cloud deployments for systems and many other things related to IT. And you can find a lot of material, good material in our website, technologyevaluation.com. You can create your login, you can get to reports, industry reports comparing solutions such as ERP for distribution or CRM and many others. And you can also do comparisons using our decision support technology tech advisor online. You can have a free trial there. But also on top of everything that we offer online, we have our services, and our services is where I am, is where I belong, is where I do perform my work. And what we do in a nutshell is to help companies to tackle complex and high-value decision-making processes in terms of IT adoption and acquisition. So imagine that, I can imagine that your company perhaps is now selecting a cloud deployment for a new ERP that you are to implement, and we can help you with that as well. And you can use a lot of the materials that we have online, but also we can help you through this in a very interesting way, in a very interesting methodology that we've been fine-tuning for 30 years now. And I'm glad to say that I'm part of the TC team, the delivery team, and we are helping clients globally. In every country you can imagine, we can deliver. So that's about TC. About myself, I don't want to talk too much about myself, seems a little bit selfish, I don't know, but I can say that my passion with IT, it's rooted in family. My mom, she's also in IT, in artificial intelligence, and she kind of gave me, the taste of what IT can do for people, and then I decided to follow that path, and then ended up going through a bachelor's degree in computer science back in Brazil, my home country. Then later I got an MBA. To understand better businesses, I was already deeply involved back in 2007 with selection and evaluation and selection for software, enterprise software in Brazil. And then I was, very interested in knowing a little bit more about business processes, so I could be a better business analyst and create requirements and then compare what the solutions out there could offer to my clients. So I've been working in this business for more than 15 years now, since 2007. And most of the projects that I worked with were ERP selections, but also I'm very glad to say that with TEC, I was able to also have experience with other types of business software, such as CRM, financial planning and analysis. Most recently, we were helping an organization, um, church-related organization, to help settle immigrants, and we also created a full set of requirements for migration and refugee systems. So I can say that we added that to our database now. So I'm very glad to say that we're not only specialized in ERP, we vary from, 60 plus different types of business software. And if we don't have that business software set of criteria in our database, we can build that from scratch by, interviewing the clients and getting into all the details of the requirements that you have, and then go to the market and see what are the solutions out there to help you with. So I work at TEC as a senior project manager. I deliver mostly in the North America, Canada, United States, Mexico, Colombia, all the Latin American countries as well, including my home country, Brazil. So that gives me a global reach, and I'm very glad that I can do that for TEC and our clients, because it gives us more experience with different, cultures, and it's very interesting to be, working globally and getting experience from many different countries. So that's enough about me. Let's talk about the agenda for today. I want to talk to you about cloud deployment types at the beginning. So we are everybody on the same page. We're talking about the same thing. Then one of the requirements that I would like to look into is some requirements in scalability and growth. Then we will look into requirement criteria for security, integration capabilities, and vendor viability. So we will address those four main, requirements area. Doesn't mean that those are, the entirety of areas that you should be looking at when you do a cloud deployment selection. But it means that those are at least the most important ones that you should really address some requirements there. So starting with the cloud deployment types, I'm putting all together here for you, where you can see on the left-hand side the private cloud, the public cloud in the middle, and on the right-hand side the hybrid and multi-cloud. So what is the difference, amongst those type of deployments? Mostly is related to your relationship with the cloud provider. So here I'm trying to show by, creating the representation of the client here. That could be a person or could be, an entire company. By creating that representation of a client and this client's connection to the cloud, I can represent to you in a diagram what type of cloud deployment that you have. So when we talk about deployments that are private, a private cloud means that you or your organization, your users will be the only people allowed to access that information, to access that um, data, to access that software that is hosted in that cloud for you. So you have a dedicated, it can be either, physical, a physical server, or it can be also a logical server, which is, just a image of a server that is representing, your capabilities that you need, such as storage, such as memory, such as processing in this big stack of servers that that cloud provider has for you. So, but what is the meaning here? What's behind the private cloud meaning? Means that you are the only one allowed. You as a user are the only one allowed to use that cloud. You are not sharing resources. Okay. On the other hand, in the middle side here, you have the public cloud. And one very good example of a public cloud would be your Gmail email, for example. Or if we want to talk about business software, we can think of a Salesforce of sorts. So, which is a known public cloud deployment where it has many clients accessing the same solution. Of course, every one of those clients, they have their boundaries. They won't be touching into anybody else's data. You will be seeing only the data that are related to you, but still is a distributed solution that can cater for many clients using the same cloud. So, of course, there are advantages from using public clouds, and there are disadvantages, and there are advantages and disadvantages for using private as well. In the case of a hybrid, I'm trying to represent here as simple as possible that a hybrid cloud would be a combination of you or your company using a public cloud that we have on the right-hand side and a private cloud. Let's give some colors here to this. Let's talk about, let's say you have an ERP system that you want to be sitting into a private cloud that is yours, and you manage the, that hosting, and you perhaps you even have in a private cloud the vendor to manage for you some aspects of the technical stuff, but you manage, that is allocated only for you. That the capacity that you have there, it's only for you, delivered for you, and nobody will see your database. You won't be sharing the same database with anybody else. You have that database just for yourself. You have that server only for yourself, only for that ERP solution. So putting a color here, I would say we can consider, just for the example, that you may have your ERP in a private cloud for any reasons. But then coming back again to the Salesforce example, perhaps you have a Salesforce CRM that was sold to you in a public cloud. Okay, I'm not saying that Salesforce can only do public cloud, because I believe they can also deliver with private cloud. And but it is a good example because they started with public cloud only. So let's say you have a Salesforce and then you want to connect with your ERP. So now you are starting to have a hybrid cloud where you will have some information connected from your ERP being shared with the CRM in a public cloud. And also you will be your end users, your entire organization, let's say the sales department will be accessing all the information directly to the public cloud in the CRM, but also they would have access to the private cloud, to the ERP. So you can have integrations in between the private cloud and the public cloud. That makes a hybrid cloud. So expanding a little bit more, we have the multi-cloud option as well as a deployment. What would be a multi-cloud? You can expand the concept of having a private cloud with a public cloud and have perhaps 3 solutions hosted in private cloud and having 4 solutions in public cloud. So, and you will do integrations, from, let's say, your ERP to your WMS that is also in a private cloud, to your CRM that it is in a public cloud, but also you will have, I don't know, your transportation management system in a different public cloud, and then you need to make all these solutions be connected. So now you have a multi-cloud where you have an ERP in a private cloud, your WMS in a private cloud, but your TMS, your transportation management system, in the public, and also your CRM in a different public cloud, from a different provider. So there you have four systems in two different types of deployments, and you need to combine all of them, and you need the information to flow amongst all these clouds, private or public. So I believe now we leveled the concept of cloud deployments and the types that we have in the market. So each of these would have their advantages and disadvantages. So in the next slide, I will go through some, advantages and disadvantages of using private, public, or hybrid and multi-cloud. So what you can see here is this table where I have the private first, the public seconding, and then in third place, hybrid and multi-cloud. So these are the columns where we can say how these options, how these deployments will be scoring against to technical control, maintenance costs, setup and adoption, scalability, legacy system support, and subscription flexibility. So I will tackle each line and then walk through the columns. Okay, so let's say technical control. Perhaps what you have is an old ERP version, I don't know, a legacy system, and the company made very clear that they don't want you anymore to have that, that storage in your company. Like the business owner said, hey, listen, we have this mini data center here, and I don't want to have all these expenses anymore with cooling, with replacing this servers, with having people here 24/7, with having to have, two different sources of internet connection. I'm pretty much running a small data center business within my manufacturing business here. So please just move this system, this on-prem system, to a different place where we can have all the benefits, for a smaller fee. And then you are moving this to a private cloud, let's say. So when you need technical control because you have your team to set up updates into the system, you need to manage some queries to the database yourself, you potentially want to be on a private cloud because the technical control overall is better when you have control over those resources that are there just for you, So the database is yours. You won't be touching in anything that can have a repercussion to another client. You won't be touching anything that can have, that can spill out any problems to any other clients using the same cloud. So that's just for you. It's a private cloud to you. So you have a higher control over technical stuff when you are on private cloud. When you are in public cloud, doesn't mean that you won't have control. Some public clouds would allow you to, at least play a little with the APIs, with the application integrations. You would be able to do minor things, but some vendors will tie your hands and won't allow you to touch that thing. Never. So when you are on public cloud, the expectation on technical control, it's lower than what you have on a private cloud. Of course, if you balance those two things, you think of, okay, when I am in a public cloud, there are people there that will take care of data performance. They will be tuning my database. I will have people taking care of integrations management. They will, I will just say, hey, listen, I need to make a flow here between those two systems. Give me how you need the information, and I'll send it to you. You create the connections, you create the security measures and everything. And on your end, as a client, you just need to export from wherever the information is coming and point it to the public cloud there. There will be somebody taking care of that for you there. So you take out of your shoulders a lot of control, but also a lot of costs involved in it, which is the next point here, the maintenance costs. But also that happens to have a lower control when you have a hybrid and multi-cloud. And what is lowering this control in a hybrid and multi-cloud is specifically the public cloud, because it's still, if you are on a hybrid or multi-cloud, you will have higher control over technical control on your private cloud, but you won't have much control on everything that is in the public cloud. So that's why hybrid and multi-cloud also score lower, or I could even say that would be slightly better because you still have a private cloud to be at a higher technical control. Anyways, going to the next line in terms of the maintenance cost, and I believe I already expressed that with my previous explanation, that you don't need to have much people with technical abilities to tackle the needs on a public cloud, because you will have that, and of course it's a shared resource. A lot of people, will be working for this public cloud providers that will be addressing issues for many clients at once. They won't be specific addressing only your issues, but once they have something sorted out, that will be put in place for everybody to share that update. So when you are on a public cloud, you have lower maintenance costs because you are paying fees for that public cloud to have someone taking care of a lot of your technical issues. But not only that, bear in mind, and I said that before, that when you have a small data center in your on premises, you would have the cost for at least two internet providers, and you would need to have, the maintenance costs for the subscriptions of databases that you have, the systems that you have. You would need to pay, and when I mean maintenance costs, is that cost you pay yearly to maintain a ERP system, let's say. You have some maintenance cost. Usually it's 20% every year of your ERP. So the company will send you patches for updating that solution for you, but you will be managing that update. So you will need to have people looking over that. So when you are on a private cloud, you have a higher maintenance cost because you still need people to address many issues relating to that system that you are maintaining. Okay. In the case of a hybrid and multi-cloud, you have higher costs as well because we are also having the higher costs to maintain a private cloud, although you will be leveling up a little because you have public and private, so you can level up a little bit more and have a lower cost than just using a private cloud. Because on the public side, on the public deployment side that you are utilizing, there you have many of these hidden costs covered by your cloud provider. So now, in terms of setup and adoption, like let's say you are interested right now into putting in place a new CRM solution, okay? And then you are comparing vendors where, one is offering you a solution in private cloud and the other one is offering you a solution in a public cloud. What happens is that you will have a slower adoption and setup with the vendor that is offering you private cloud, because you need to set up and do the provisioning with this vendor, and that will take a while, because you gotta do a leveling session with the provider to see how much you will need for processing capabilities, for usage of the band of the internet, the bandwidth, and also you will need to ascertain with that vendor how much of data will be flowing. So you need to go through provisioning with that vendor for private cloud and be 100% sure that that you will have the right solution, the right specifications to cater in a private cloud for that solution that you are to implement. In this case, we were using the CRM as an example. Whereas, on the other hand, in a public cloud, you think of it like, again, using just for the sake of the example of Salesforce, simply after you sign the deal, after you accept the terms and conditions, those licenses are only held if you don't know which users are you granting access. So that can be done in one day, and by the other day, the next day, you will have all the users already ready for using that system. So it's faster, the setup and adoption as well. In the case of the hybrid cloud, I'm saying that it's slower because you have the private cloud as well going on there, and you also got to do the provisioning. You also got to do all these sessions to ensure that you are using the right private cloud specifications to adopt that solution and to cater to your users a system that will be at its best performance. So it's also slower. So as you figured so far, every time we have hybrid and multi-cloud, you will be leveled by the lowest score from one of these sites. You know, as you can see, um, in the case in technical, if you can have a higher technical control and you have lower in the other side, you will be always scoring on lower because you are mixing things that are not the same. So you will always have the limitation of the lowest score from both sides. The scalability. I need to make, and I have an asterisk there in public cloud where I say that the scalability for a public cloud is unlimited. Well, unlimited, it's a very philosophical concept, you know? Of course, no company grows to unlimited resources from one day to another. And just to give an example, I cannot say that, I don't know, yesterday you, purchased this new public cloud solution in ERP, let's say, and then you went from 20 users to unlimited users just the other day. That doesn't happen because we have a limited number of people in this world, and I believe not everybody will be working for your company. So it's a tricky concept, but that's how the vendors they play in the market. They say, hey, you have unlimited access here. I can put up, unlimited resources to, um, you know, guarantee that you won't have any performance issues. So the scalability in a public cloud tends to be unlimited, but really saying that there will be no issue if tomorrow you need to grow by hundreds of users every month. You know, of course, the vendor would internally, redirect some resources to cope with, this scalability for you because they will be seeing the increase of number of users and how that impact in performance. But yeah, we can say that there will be unlimited resources to scale. In the case of a private cloud, you will be limited to the specifications you have in place for the server that you have and all its surrounding capabilities. In surrounding capabilities, I mean, let's say internet connection, the bandwidth bit, in your terms and conditions, in your SLA agreement, time for support and things like that. Let's say you're trying to grow and you are, sorry, not trying to grow, you're growing. And let's say you have 300 users and you see that if you grow by another 300 users, that private cloud you have won't cope with another 300 users. So you call your private cloud provider and you say, hey, listen, tomorrow I need, to accommodate another 300 users, and that will have a huge impact. I don't know, for seasonal work, I don't know, anything. I need to accommodate something, and then your provider would say, hey, listen, you are running on a virtual machine here. I can give you more resources, but that needs me, I will need to do a setup here. I will need to work, I don't know, this night to put in another, virtual machine for you and connect everything, ensure that this is working properly. And then, yes, you can put in that 300 new users. But in the case, let's say you're hosting a actual, machinery there, it's the server physical being hosted there for you, you would need to give them a little bit more time than just for tomorrow, to cope with putting in another 300 users. So you have limited scalability because you're tied to your servers, doesn't matter if it's virtual or physical specifications. So when you go for private cloud, you gotta leave some wiggle room there so you can expand and have you know, this space to cope with new quantity of users or new capacity. You know, sometimes perhaps it's not even you're going to a peak load and it's not even related to users, but to processing. You know, something you just signed a new deal with a new client and you need to process a myriad of invoices or transactions for that client. You know, so the system is not limiting you, but the specifications of your server is. So make sure you leave some wiggle room, but also if you you know, go on a private cloud with too much capacity not being used, you'll be also putting money, you know, you will be also putting money, in the lack of a better word, in the garbage, because you have all this capacity there not really being used, you know. So you got to do fine tuning there so you can use these private cloud to its full, but not limiting you to expand. In terms of legacy system support, it's interesting because the public cloud can support this because the root, the core of having a public cloud offer to users is to have you to the most updated version of that system. So, and to be really to the end users, to be something that you don't really feel when the system is updated. You know, you can simply log off today and tomorrow log in, and the version of that system would have changed in the middle of the night. And there are things in different places now, but you really don't feel like you've changed the system's version. So when you are in a public cloud, you have that sorted out and you are always up to date. But when you are in a private cloud, you can support legacy systems. Let's say you purchased in the past an ERP, just, you know, for the example, it could have been AWMS as well. I had this, I will use the WMS actually because it's interesting because recently we had a project where the client wanted to move its WMS to the cloud. And then one of the requirements was I should still be able to connect this old WMS to the machinery here because I have robots in the warehouse that are tied to this WMS solution. And I cannot use the same robots for newer versions of that same solution for that WMS or for other WMS providers. So I gotta ensure that, you know, I can put this old WMS in the cloud, in the private cloud, and it will converse and it will integrate with those robots in place. So that was a tricky one. And yes, you can support legacy systems in a private cloud. You know, you can use even, and that's one of the advantages of private cloud, you can create a simulated older version of a Linux or a Unix or a Windows server that, you know, sometimes is needed to run that legacy system on top. So private cloud gives you that support. Now you see that the hybrid cloud and the multi-cloud, it's also supporting this because you'll be having the advantage of having a private cloud in that environment of a multi-cloud or hybrid cloud. So you can support the legacy system there. So just to give you an example and give you an idea, let's say with the WMS example, let's say I like very much this WMS. It's working beautifully. We don't need to change this thing. The only thing tying us with this is, you know, first, it's too expensive to change, and we are happy with this version of the WMS. And this WMS is connected to the robots I have at the warehouse. So I don't want to change that WMS, but I'm up and I'm down. Scoop, I'm sorry, I'm down for changing the ERP though, and I want the ERP to be on a public cloud. So let's say you have them then a hybrid cloud where your ERP is sitting in a public cloud, so you don't need to mind at all about updating. That will be updated for you. You don't need to mind at all about maintaining that ERP. But you like the WMS so much, and it's not worthwhile to change it, so you would have it in a private cloud. So there you go with a hybrid cloud combination. You can then connect both and use the support for legacy systems in a private cloud to take advantage of that deployment for your company. Then, coming to another disadvantage and advantages comparison, subscription flexibility. It's less flexible when you are on a private cloud because the vendor is guaranteeing you that capacity is there for you. So although you don't use it, although let's say your company now it's not using all that capacity, they will charge you for it. So because the vendor, that cloud vendor has that cost and is a recurring cost for them, so they need to have you to pay for it. In terms of the public cloud, it's more flexible because usually when you are paying for public cloud, you are relating your fees to users. And as you grow or as you diminish the quantity of users that you have, you can be flexible with that. Of course, you always need to keep an eye with the terms and agreements that you are signing up with, because some vendors, they have thresholds, to really change the subscription fees. So let's say they will accommodate you to 300 users at one price, but if you go lower than 150, it's not profitable to them anymore. So they will, perhaps charge you more. So you have some gains in terms of playing with the numbers. To get bigger, you get, a lower cost for each user. But if you get smaller in number of users, you will be paying more per user. So be mindful of that as well, but it's more flexible. In the case of a hybrid and multi-cloud, again, we are leveling it with the less advantageous cloud deployment you're using. In this case, it's less flexible for hybrid because you also are using private cloud. So, coming to our next slide about scalability and growth criteria suggestion. I'm suggesting you some criteria here, but I don't want you to think that this is, the only criteria you should be looking at, because learning from 16 plus years of experience, I can tell you that each client is different in terms of requirements. I can tell you that each client has its own needs and will come up with different requirements. So those criteria here are suggestions that you should be looking at. So when we are talking about scalability and growth, be mindful of scalable support. This is one thing that is very important. So let's say, and we will get to this discussion a little later about the local and global vendors. So let's say you are looking into a local vendor and a global vendor, and then that global vendor, it has 24/7 support that works in many languages, and you can scale if you grow to, I don't know, different territories, different countries, and different languages. So you don't have that barrier. But then probably the local vendor, that one that is close to you, it's a data center. It's fine. It's a tier 3, tier 4. I don't know. It's a fine data center, and that vendor lacks on scalability for support in multi languages, perhaps. So there are many requirements that you can put in here for scalable support, such as number of people in place, the time they are available for you, if it's 8 hours per day or if it's 24/7, if they can cope with multi languages, if they can't. So a lot of criteria can come up of the scalable support. The other one is and I believe it's one of the most important criteria, is to really read the service level agreements that you have, because in those SLAs, as we say in the market, you will have the scope definition, how you will handle performance, uptime. Like I've been seeing in terms of uptime, some global vendors, they offer 99.7 uptime. There are others that offer you 97% uptime. There are others that will offer you 99.2. So is there really a difference there? Well, perhaps, yeah, 2 point something percent. But how that translates into cost for you, how that translates into you know, other requirements that are also important to your company. So look into the service level agreements, look into the availability, look into the penalties that you would have in that said contract. Then another criteria suggestion for you in scalability and growth is how the vendors would handle peak load. And just to exemplify, let's say you work with Amazon. I don't know, you are distributing your own products, but you also sell through Amazon. And then you have a peak on Amazon Prime Day, for in your solution, you will need to cope with a lot of purchase orders and also integrating your system with the Amazon warehouse to say if you have enough in their warehouses to deliver. If not, then you need to create a order to manufacture these products that you've been selling. So when you face a peak load like that, or Boxing Day, I don't know, perhaps you are in the e-commerce side, and then you are dealing with a peak on a Black Friday. So you gotta see on the fine print how this will be handled by that vendor. Okay, that's really important. The elasticity not only meaning capacity in terms of the performance, peak load, and being able to scale with you, but also being able to accommodate all your needs as you grow. Let's say, well, listen, vendor X, now I need to bring in my old WMS to your cloud solution. Now, your cloud environment. Now I need to bring in other systems that I have. Now I need to have a different type of connection with you. I need to be in SSL connection. I need to have single sign-on. So this vendor needs to cope with many things, to be elastic enough to cope with all your requirements and secure you. The obvious ones that are, growing, expanding, giving you more resources, giving you more capabilities in terms of functionality, but also be able to cope with your other needs as well, as I just said. So elasticity is really important to have as a criteria. And this part of the cost of scaling, like as I said before, some vendors would charge you per user, but I've been seeing it as well in private and public cloud vendors that would also charge you for data exchange, for every time other systems would use an entry point, for documents that are flowing in between systems. So you gotta also read the fine print and see how the cost of scaling are connected, because perhaps you have a really good cost for the new users, but if you are growing in terms of using more of their band with it, if you're using more their data processing capabilities, they will charge you more. So you gotta ascertain that you are having the best cost possible. So that's for scalability and growth for your company. And I would give you also some criteria for security. Okay, this is very interesting because one thing that is understood in the market is that either private or public cloud would offer you a better security environment, a better security set of measures. But you gotta really read these service level agreements. You gotta go through the identity and access management, how they do that. You gotta really create requirements to see how they encrypt data and how they store that data, how they do the transfer of that data, how they deal with firewalls and intrusion detection and preventing this type of, let's say, a DDoS, um, somebody trying to take down your system by creating multiple, consults to your database and then putting you down. So you gotta ask these vendors how they cope with these types of problems and how they detect and prevent this. One way to see the security criteria is to ask them as well for certifications and to be compliant with, let's say, GDPR, HIPAA, and other requirements. And if you play globally, and SDEC plays globally, you will see that perhaps you will have a company that has a global reach, and perhaps you will have your systems stored in a data center in the United States, where there you need to be compliant with the United States data protection, and also with the Canadian, if you have a Canadian facility, but also with the Brazilian, the LGPD, and Mexican. So you really gotta work through the compliance issues that you have. Make sure that you have those listed as requirements, and then ask these vendors if they are compliant or not with the requirements that you have in data protection and security measures. Okay. So also the physical security, like access to it and disaster recovery and environment. So let's say, okay, we have this data center. We know that it is located close to the San Andreas, I forgot that word, but it's an area that has a lot of earthquakes. So is it really safe to have that, your systems close to that area? Or perhaps the data center is close to a big river that can flood the entire city, and then your systems will be down because of that. And one case that happened to me that I can give you as an example was interesting. That once we when I was in IT managing systems, and we had our ERP in a private cloud. One of the vendors was close to one pipeline that had a leak and exploded. And that pipeline actually was really close to this energy source um, um, transmission. And also, alongside with that energy source transmission, there was one of their internet providers. So it broke the fiber there, and they, of course, they had redundancies with the internet. They had redundancies with the energy source, but there was a lot of clients there. And I remember there was a company that was really at the peak moment that couldn't invoice their clients at that time because there was only one redundancy. And that disaster came into place, and there was something, not even close to the data center, but affecting resources that would affect the data center. So you got to really think about physical as well. Sometimes some vendors in the public cloud, they won't disclose where they are located exactly, because that's also a security measure. So have that in mind as well, because sometimes it's also important to you not to know where is physically your information in, so that you avoid any type of hacker, you avoid any type of hijacking your information in systems. Also, as I said before, the distributed denial of services protection, attack mitigation, things like that. And the data backups and recovery, are they storing that data backup in a cold mountain? Are they sending this, enough away from the data center? So I don't know if that's true or not, but I heard that the two towers came down in the United States. One tower was backing up the other. So once one was down, the other two all the data from some companies were completely erased and lost. I don't know if that's true. It seems to be just, for the sake of the example of having something, really physically far, and so at least 30 kilometers to make sure that your backups are safe. But it can be a good example as well. And I need to say, when I was in IT and doing data backups and things like that, I used to store our backups in I don't know, maybe 2, 3 kilometers from the facility. And even though I didn't feel safe, that if something happened with that company in that area, like a flood or something, or any natural disaster such as fire, and we are Canada's right now under a lot of fire, 3 kilometers wasn't enough away for having that data protected, that backup protected. So be mindful of that and use that as a criteria. Where are these vendors storing the backups? And what are their measures in place for recovery and to keep you up and running if one of their data centers loses access physically via disaster or an attack by any ways. So now we will talk about selection criteria for integration capabilities. Things that are, quite common is to ask about APIs, the integrations capabilities, and also the SDKs, the software development kits. Are these vendors facilitating easy connections with other deployment options? Let's say, I don't know, back in that example with the WMS, perhaps that WMS can only communicate with the ERP via batches every end of the day. Or no, it needs to communicate freely, and you gotta, have an API to handle that. Or perhaps you even have a middleware to communicate between both, between your ERP in the public cloud and your WMS in a private cloud. So you gotta come up with these questions. How do these vendors tackle facilitating easy connections? What are the data synchronization options? So we just touched on that. If it's via batches, if it's via flow of the information directly, if it's via a middleware solution. So that layer of, let's say, a middleware solution should be in which side, in the public cloud solution or the private cloud solution. So, or on your own on-premise solution side. So you gotta ask those questions and get that sorted out before you select a cloud deployment. The compatibility, with technology platforms such as databases and operational systems. I touched a little bit on this, where we were talking about some on-premises systems that you are moving to the cloud, to a private cloud. Perhaps they will entail that you have, I don't know, an old version of Unix and some old version of a SQL database or Oracle database. So you got to ensure that these platforms that you're utilizing, they are compatible with those technologies and operational systems. And see what are the costs associated with integrations. I also mentioned before, but just as a reminder, if it is per transaction, per data volume, per batch, per document, or perhaps sometimes some vendors will be interested as well in how much money you're making with these transactions, and they will charge you a small fee for that. So there are many types of costs associated with integrations and with different cloud deployments. So really, when you are addressing this with the vendors, you need to figure it out so you don't step into something that can be a higher cost to you than what you were expecting. So now vendor viability, coming back to that discussion on local versus global. So you have big names such as Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft Azure, but still there are a lot of local and very good local vendors. So when you are assessing a local versus global vendor, you really need to look into what are your needs. Am I a company? Is this a company that needs to be, making rollouts globally. So I need a partner that can, cater to me in Asia, in Africa, in South America. Or no, I'm okay, you know, with this local vendor that I can reach out, that I can have, contact with somebody that I know that works there. I know, you know, because this person was a colleague of mine before. So there are advantages and disadvantages of adopting a local versus a global vendor, but really comes down to your requirements. I'm not saying that a local vendor is not able to cater to you to a different country. I'm just saying that perhaps, being near to your uh, like let's say you are using a local vendor for ERP and you have your ERP in a local vendor, and then now your company is expanding from Canada to Brazil, or Canada to Uruguay, or Canada to India. There are a lot of um, connections to be done from Canada to India to Canada, to Brazil. If you ping that connection, you will see how many nodes you will go through, and that will have an impact over your performance over in utilizing this ERP. So it's really important if you want to go with a local vendor, you are aware of that. And perhaps, I don't know, you would like to then at that point, if you expand to move from that local to a global vendor that can replicate and give you more outreach. I'm not saying that they are better or worse than the local vendors. I'm just saying that sometimes having a local vendor distributes better this balance. You can have more certainty into delivering anywhere. Where is the data center located is important. As I said before, there are some vendors that they won't disclose that because, especially if they are public cloud, they will say, okay, we are in the west region of the United States, because they don't want to be, with a target in their back. So, like we know for sure that some big names such as Netflix and other companies, they are, and a good example of a public cloud provider. And I don't know if perhaps somebody wants to put down Netflix or Salesforce, and they know that the data center is just right there, Netflix Road #1. They will go there, and do whatever it takes to take that down. So sometimes some companies, they will just say, we are in the West Coast, we are in the East Coast, we are in India somewhere, we are in Brazil somewhere, we are in Mexico somewhere. So, but to you, it is important because you want to know how many nodes you have to get there. If that will have an impact to your performance, you want to know as well in terms of the compliance, if they will be compliant being in that company, in that state, or in that country. That's why it is important. So you want to know as well what are the redundancies in place. So before I mentioned the tiers, you have tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. That means about, maintenance and how they can do maintenance without pushing you down. It's also about how they can cope with disaster recovery, and all of that. You can look it up online about the tiers, and it's a very interesting thing to create as a requirement as well. But usually a private cloud provider, they perhaps will have a little less redundancies in place than a public cloud provider, because this public cloud provider is catering to many clients at once, and they need to make sure that all these clients will be connected. Whereas the private cloud provider perhaps is backing you up, but not guaranteeing via contract that they will have redundancy in place and disaster recovery in place to put you back into work with, I don't know, an 8-hour backup in just, I don't know, 12 hours, 24 hours. So usually the public cloud providers, they would have those measures in place. They will guarantee you, we are balancing this thing with another data center of ours. We have, actual information as good as 1 hour ago. And if that data center goes down, you will be up in less than 1 hour with 1 hour, difference in time information. Perhaps you will lose some things you did, but it's just 1 hour and you will be up and running. But in a private cloud, usually you gotta pay extra for that to have redundancies in place, and that costs a lot. I can tell you this. So you want to have also redundancies in place for internet connection, power source, and as I said before, I lived through a power source and internet connection problem with, in a previous life as an ERP manager. And also you want to have a business continuity plan in place. Is that what I said before about the redundancy and knowing that if anything goes south, you know that you have your ERP as good as 8 hours ago back up and running tomorrow. So you want to know what is your business continuity plan just there. Another thing to think of is the expertise in the technology that's being held. So let's say you will have staff in this private cloud or public cloud provider that really knows what they are doing, and they can help you with, any support that it's level 2 or 3. Sorry, that there are any support up the chain that gets to a level where you really need someone that knows how to fix things. So you gotta assess that expertise of the technology being held. And one way of doing that is to making sure that the staff's qualifications, certifications, and availability to the business, it's there. I remember once a friend of mine, he used to do a data performance services, and once one of his clients had a problem with data performance, and he needed to flew through the country to get to the other side and to go physically to the to that private cloud, and then make sure that that data base was working properly. And that costs that client a lot of money, because the private cloud provider didn't have the staff with qualification and certifications to deal with that sad database. But they found someone somewhere else. They hired this friend of mine who said that he flew private jet from East Coast to West Coast just to go there and fine tune the database for that client. So make sure you have that staff's qualifications, certifications to help you through. Otherwise, you will need to hire people that perhaps can be expensive too. So with that, to finish, almost 1 hour of me talking, and I want now to hear from you. We go to the Q&A session. I believe we covered a lot of ground. I just wanted to say to you that this is not extensive as criteria. We can help you with thousands of criteria for any type of systems or cloud deployment types. And but I'm here to also help you with any questions. Victoria, with you.
Thank you so much, Helbert. That was a great presentation. I think that you really highlighted some pretty key important aspects, considering compliance, considering the different types of cloud deployments, considering what you should consider when selecting this. I know we have a few questions, but I'd like to give people in the chat, but I'd like to give people the opportunity to raise their hand. Again, if you have any questions, I'll say it in Spanish as well. If you have any questions, just select the hands on the left-hand side. It should be, let's see, it should be on the right-hand side of your drop-down menu, and we can open the mic for you to be able to ask any questions that you have. Let's see, I don't know. Si tienen preguntas, pueden levantar la mano y podemos abrir el micro para que pueden, el micrófono para que puedan preguntar sus preguntas sin problema, si quieren. Okay, so we'll start with some of the questions that we have here in the chat. Let me just bring these up. In terms of compliance, Helbert, is this something that tech is able to help us to evaluate? Does tech services help us with compliance? That was the question.
Okay, our take into compliance would be to gather the requirements in compliance that you have potentially, if you have already compliance measures in place, if you are compliant with, I don't know, SEC in the United States or other, organizations that you want to follow those compliance measures, we can capture then those requirements and create them as requirements for you to evaluate solutions. What we don't do on the other side is to be a consultant for you to implement compliance. That would be perhaps a job for a compliance type of assessment with a consulting firm that does compliance. But if you have those compliance measures in place, and if it's already, a compliance going on within the company, we can then interview your compliance department and whoever is on top of compliance with your company. If there's not a department, perhaps sometimes it is is under HR or IT. Sometimes we can interview you and then create the list of requirements for compliance for you, and then having them to compare in any shape or form in any evaluation you want to do. Compliance for ERP, compliance for CRM, compliance for cloud deployments, any way you want.
Thank you, Helbert. We have a question here in the audience as well. It says, for a public cloud like Salesforce, are all the managed fees included in the subscription cost? Example, scalability, redundancy, backup, and maintenance?
Each case is, each vendor has its own pricing, and it's embedding these things in their pricing. Sometimes they have levels of commitment where they say, hey, listen, if you're buying from us, we will make sure that you have support level 2, level 3, whatever. And we have also, people available for you 24/7, or it's just between working hours. So when you assess these vendors, such as Salesforce or other CRM public cloud providers, you gotta really read the fine print or send to them a set of requirements that are fit for you, so then they can point you to the right subscription fee that would tackle your needs. So I cannot say from the top of my mind what Salesforce is offering right now, but I'm sure if you're interested, if you are evaluating right now at CRM, I'm sure we can help you to gauge what's needed for your specific needs, and then create the criteria set for you that would compare Salesforce against other CRM vendors, and then you can have it clear. But my take is, if you want to know, you should ask to the vendor, and make sure they say yes or no, and they point you to the right subscription fee.
Thank you, Helbert. This is one of those questions that comes up, and it doesn't matter which kind of webinar you're in, whether it's cloud, ERP, CRM, but should I conduct a maturity assessment before migrating to the cloud?
Oh, that's a good one. Actually, Victoria, Maddie and I, we were discussing this the other day, because we got, Maddie had a client that requested for a maturity assessment first. So he expanded our methodology now to have that in, and we are working with a client in Mexico as we speak, doing a maturity assessment for them. So that's a new product for TC. Let's say usually we would do this throughout the evaluation and selection process, and then at the end would say, hey, it's not mature enough now, perhaps to hold a little while, or yes, let's go for it, people are ready, and perhaps you gotta tweak a little bit the processes and adopt best practices, But now we have something that it's an add-on to our services that can answer you that before you engage on evaluation and selection. So you don't need to go through the whole process to figure if you are mature enough for going to the cloud or not. You can do that prior. You can do that before.
Yeah. Excellent, which I'm sure saves them a significant amount of time, right? Going through that entire process before, instead of having to go through beginning to end.
Yeah.
What about if you go for a cloud deployment? Do you have to sign with a managed services provider?
mini managed services provider, like a third party, like your implementer, that will also give you some extra support?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Yes, that can be helpful. To be fair, the solutions out there, there are public cloud, and that's meaning about that. That's about public cloud, correct, Victoria?
Yes.
Okay, so just for the example, let's say it's a public cloud CRM, it's a Salesforce. It's an easy example because they practically created that market at that time as a public cloud CRM provider. But just to give the example, let's say you are not comfortable enough with coping with any challenges calling the support at Salesforce. Perhaps your subscription fees, you wanted to maintain them low, and then you choose a package where you need to go through a chatbot first, and then talk to someone, and then it scales up, and then gets to the person that really has the answer. So you don't want it. You don't want it. And then you have the partner that helped you through the implementation, and this partner knows a lot of your business processes, and he knows everything. So perhaps you want to have a after implementation support agreement with them, just to be more flexible and be more in tune with your needs and answer things quicker, and having a quicker answer. And then you only scale to the public cloud provider things that are really out of their scope. Like, okay, these are things that you need to talk to that cloud provider, because I can't change to the level where I can manage. So yeah, that could be a good idea if you're willing to pay, and if the maturity isn't there to really use just the support given by the private cloud provider. Could be a
Okay.
good idea.
Okay, thank you for that, Helbert. I appreciate all your responding to all these different questions that we had here in the chat and through this here. I just wanted to make a comment that we do have, Tech does have several resources available. I'm going to share them here in the chat. Many different pieces that our content team is writing, our analyst teams are writing, our experts here like Helbert are writing. We'd love to have you guys visit us here and check out some of these, and feel free to reach out to us. Again, we're easily, well, you have Helbert's contact information here below.
Yeah.
Anything, please do connect with him on LinkedIn, or you can reach him there. Thank you, Techno Webinars, for, go ahead, did you want to say something? I wanted to just thank Techno Webinars.
No. I wanted to thank Techno Webinars at the beginning, and I completely forgot the name, but we've been working with them for years now. And Danielle, thank you so much for putting this, out there into your audience. I know we have a lot of audiences in the Hispanophones, and we also can cater in Spanish. I've been involved as well in the projects in Mexico, in Colombia, and Ecuador, and it would be really nice to have all of you here in Canada to visit us, or to take a look at our website, or call me. This is my number with my extension, or send me an email, and we can talk for sure. And don't be shy. We speak Spanish, and we can also talk to you in your preferred language.
Yes, multiple languages: French, English, Spanish, Chinese, Portuguese, you name it.
Romanian, Japanese, Persian.
Yes.
So many languages at TC. Yeah. We have no excuses to cater globally.
Right, to not be able to cater
To not be able to cater globally. That's the right phrase, yeah.
God willing. Thank you so much, Helbert. Thank you, technowebinars.com. Thank you to the audience for joining us here. Please do follow us. We'll send you a copy of this recording. We'll hope to see you guys again soon next time. Thank you. Have a great day.